I'm very popular with cleaning ladies. Well, I thought I'd talk a little bit about what's going on with software and some of the opportunities and really the revolutionary changes that will be driven over the next several decades. Revolutions not just in the field of computer science, but really in the tools of how people communicate, how they work, how they create, how they're educated, that lead me to say this is the most interesting time ever in terms of the kind of work that all of you will be doing. The frontiers are there. The science is moving in a way to solve the very tough problems and really empower people in ways that were never possible before. I think this program is a great program. Jeff has educated me on it. It really speaks very directly to a challenge that Microsoft sees, which is that we get lots of great engineers and we get lots of people who've got good business backgrounds, but we rarely get people who combine those skills. And particularly as you move up the ranks in Microsoft, the number of people who've got that background really are bringing those two skill sets to bear. Turns out the world at large has a great shortage. And so seeing a program like this makes a lot of sense to me, and I can guarantee you the opportunities you'll have will be quite phenomenal and make whatever hard work is required in the program well worth the energy you put into it. Microsoft, of course, is turning 30 this year, and that means I've spent over 60% of my life working at the same company, basically doing the same thing, pursuing a dream that the magic of what was going on in hardware combined with the right type of breakthrough software could create a tool that would really be very, very impactful. And this is a dream that really came out of my early exposure to computers going back to age 13 and a chance together with Paul Allen to talk about what that meant. One of the key elements here is the idea of exponential improvement. That is, the microprocessor that was in the kit computer on the cover of Popular Electronics in January 1975, the one that Paul and I saw, and we said, boy, it's time to get going and start this company we've been talking about, and that's, of course, when I dropped out of Harvard. That computer was 1 million times less powerful than a computer that you can buy for $400 today. And there just aren't things like that in the world where things change by a factor of 1 million. Gas mileage doesn't go up by a factor of 1 million. Tractors don't get better by a factor of 1 million. Almost nothing in society changes even a factor of 2 or more. And to have this one element that's changing in that way, while most of these other elements are changing very little, if at all, it means that its role steps forward and something very, very dramatic comes out of that. Computers, when Microsoft was founded, were kind of daunting. They were used by large organizations. They were mostly going to keep ID databases to track people down, or they would print out your bills. In fact, you'd get actually a punch card. Have any of you ever seen a punch card? Okay, you must have been to a museum. I do come from the age when programming was sitting down with punch card machines and typing up your Fortran program and going down to the basement where this was the University of Washington, where they had their computer, and submitting your job. They would put the cards in, you'd wait, and you'd have a slot that they'd put your printout in, so you'd wait several hours. They'd give you your printout back. You'd look at it and say, okay, on card 14 you had a typo, so you'd go back up, fix that, resubmit your cards, wait another 2 hours. It just wasn't quite the same. And that's why when interactive computers came along, when mini computers came down in price and the idea you could have computers getting cheaper and cheaper came along, it wasn't just a quantitative change, it was a qualitative change. To think of it from being a tool of an organization to a tool of an individual. And most of the changes that have been wrought by computing are about empowering the individual. It's very difficult in a society where the people in power, in an authoritarian way, try to suppress information change now. It's just impossible because in that society there's going to be people who can connect up one way or another to the internet and see what's going on in the world at large. And being able to block that, filter that, really can't be done without blocking something that's necessary to economic activity. And so societies, say like North Korea, can decide, okay, we don't need the economic activity, we'll block this stuff out. But except for a few extreme cases like that, if you look at Russia or China or other countries, they, by necessity, have to have these modern tools there. And the modern tools, by necessity, create a level of openness and empowerment that is really quite phenomenal. The impact of the tool is really hard to overstate, not just within our own industry, but say as an enabling factor. The other field I talk about that's fast changing and very exciting what it's going to do is the field of medicine and biology, that we will find cures for not only the diseases of rich countries like heart disease, mental diseases, cancer, and those things over these next 20 to 30 years, but also with the right little extra energy applied to the diseases that are a challenge for the world at large. That's because biology is getting better. Well, biology could not improve without the tools of computer science, without the databases, the internet, email, even simple things like PowerPoint. They are sitting on top of the efficiency that the software ecosystem is making available there. So things like looking, when you find a gene in one species and you want to see if that's ever been seen in another species and you want to understand the data about what kind of thing that might regulate, that's all very complex software. A good example of this is one of the senior researchers at Microsoft, a fellow named Jim Gray, has as a hobby astronomy. And he's an amazing person, one of the greatest database designers of all time. But he decided to get together with the astronomy community and take all their observations and put them into a database, because astronomy is no longer simply being lucky enough to be at the telescope when one simple flash of light happens to appear and that's your great discovery. It's much more about taking large bodies of data about how galaxies are spaced out or how various dark matter must be affecting things. It's a matter of taking massive data and testing out a hypothesis against all these observations. And so he created essentially a single database of all the astronomical observations that had ever been done. And so then people could put in and test their ideas and try things out. And it was phenomenal. It showed that astronomy has become a science of data as much as it is anything else. Now, it was easy to do that in astronomy, because in astronomy you don't have a lot of competition where people are trying to hoard the data and think they can get rich because they know something about some star that nobody else knows. And so getting those standards put together was easy. The same thing is happening, maybe not quite as quickly in the world of biology, tracking which genes lead to which things, what drug interactions there are, how protein chemistry works, and so that is what's going to drive this revolution. People often look at how quickly things have improved and say, aren't we going to reach limitations? I mean, a factor of 1 million, okay, what's yet to come? Well, the answer is that over the next 20 years, we'll see the same rate of improvement. That is close to another factor of 1 million type progression there. We'll see that in the speed of the processor. We'll see that in the size of the disk that you can have in a desktop machine or carry around in your pocket. We'll see that in the bandwidth of the network, the amount of information that we can send around. We'll see it in all the elements, the quality of the screens, the resolution, the richness of the graphics. These things will be so abundant that, in a sense, the question that a software entrepreneur should ask, given that these things will be almost zero cost, what is it that software can do? How can software help in product design or customer communication? How can software help make the world a smaller place, get people to solve problems together, track things that are going on? After all, we need software, not just in these medical areas, but we need software to model things that are very complex. Clearly, the civilization as a whole has disturbed the global environment in a way that's leading to a warming cycle that's somewhat self-reinforcing. And yet, I'm not pessimistic about this. I'm very optimistic because I believe that by taking the tools of computer science and modeling what's going on, we'll be able to look at exactly what the disequilibrium is and understand what sort of changes in terms of cloud cover or heat distribution or CO2 cycle disruption actually needs to be put into play there to make sure that something terrible doesn't happen, which without technology, no degree of just denial of coal burning or anything like that will be able to make a reversal there. So, we need these advances, and fortunately, these advances are coming fairly rapidly. In the earlier session I did, somebody asked about Xbox 360, and that's kind of just the fun side of what people will be doing. The phone of the future will clearly be dramatically better than it is today. For example, you'll be able to talk to it, ask for any information that you're interested in. If you're in a foreign country and there's a sign, you'll be able to just click that camera. It'll send that image up to a translation server that'll send back down to a translation of what that sign was. If you're in a store looking at a product, any photo you take of it can be recognized. It'll tell you, hey, that price isn't really the best price. You should go buy it somewhere else nearby. Or the review says that that's not the product that fits what your needs are. And so the phone, by having richer software inside it and being connected to across the wireless internet to software running on other machines using very deep advances in computer science that we and others are driving to let software be more componentized, that phone will be way more powerful. Certainly we won't have cash like we have today. That will have moved to be a completely digital thing. The idea of getting almost a virtual reality map of seeing traffic conditions, what's going on, things nearby, you'll just take that for granted. If you've granted permission for your friends to know if you're in the vicinity, then they'll just be alerted, and you'll see on your little device that somebody you'd like to talk to is nearby, and you'll go off and do it. The device in your pocket will fit together with the device that you carry around. That will either be some type of tablet device that instead of reading news off of paper, magazines, daily newspapers will all be simply done on the screen. Students won't have textbooks because after all, they're expensive, they're hard to customize, they're not multimedia, the teacher doesn't get that much control over them, and they can't point out to the wealth of the rest of the world's information. So in the same way that the encyclopedias moved to be a digital document by and large, all documents will move down that path. The encyclopedia reminds me of an interesting story because when I first met Warren, I was giving him a hard time and saying, hey, you own World Book, Warren, and it's not looking too good. We're going to put the encyclopedia on a CD, and it's going to be far better. And we even talked with that subsidiary about working together, and they weren't that interested. So we created a thing called Encarta. And so at a get-together with Warren, I had my wife come and demo Encarta and show how there were timelines and songs and things like that. And so Warren looked at that and he said, oh, that's a bit of a problem. But then he said, well, it doesn't smell as nice as the World Book does with that nice leather cover. It doesn't look as good up there on that bookshelf, so maybe we can still sell a few copies. In fact, of course, it's one of the few businesses that Warren's in that is actually, along with his shoe business, that has gone down in sales. And now people kind of take it for granted that if you want that kind of information, some combination of a digital multimedia encyclopedia together with what's out on the internet, whether it's search or Wikipedia or any of those things, that is the vast resource of human knowledge linked together and brought to you in the right way. Now, in order to do that for the newspaper and magazines, we have to have screens that are better. Ideally, we'd have screens that you can just fold up, so it's kind of like going back to the old papyrus where they used to write on skins and things, and those were all very foldable. You know, we'll have screens like that you just take them out and work with them. You will want large screen devices. You won't just have the pocket device. When you want to write a paper, read something, you want to look at a trip, choices of where you want to go, or some long paper you want to do, you'll want that bigger screen. And so we'll have screens of all sizes. Even on your wrist, you'll have the smallest screen. Your pocket, you'll have the next one. You have these tablets. At your desk, you'll have a fairly big set of screens. Your way of interacting will be far more varied than it is today. I talked about speech recognition. Another thing that's just coming along and we're very big on is the idea of using a pen. The pen is very natural. People by age, say, 8 or 9 are very good at drawing things, pointing at things. And so the idea that in the future, the keyboard will be there, but you will point and speak as well as type. So it'll be mixed mode type interaction. That to us is kind of common sense. Now, it leads to a very tough problem in computer science, which is handwriting recognition. You know, people have fairly sloppy handwriting, and yet human intelligence is so incredible that it overcomes that, just in the same way it does with speech. And many of these artificial intelligence type problems about, well, when I was getting out of Harvard, which is now, what, 25, well, most of the 30 years ago. It's complicated because I started the company and then I went back to school. But anyway, about 28 years ago, the people were very optimistic that we were on the verge of solving those problems. They would have said within 5 or 10 years, speech recognition in particular and vision would actually be solved problems. In fact, they turned out to be very tough. At the risk of being over-optimistic again, but with very good scientific data to back me up, I can say this 10-year period is that 10-year period where computer science will solve those problems. And so if you think about what that means for software, one of our top researchers, a man named Butler Lamson, who in his young years was the key person at a Xerox Palo Alto Research Center where a lot of key things were developed. Anyway, he's worked for Microsoft for quite some time. He says one of the goals we should have for software is that there should never be a car crash ever again. Not a computer crash, we need to get rid of those too, but a car crash. And his point is that with visual recognition and all these sensors, we should be able to take over the driving function in such a way that someone can never make the mistake that would lead to a fatal accident. And you know, he's absolutely right. That is within the grasp of software within these next several decades. The idea of machine translation, which has been a very tough problem. We are today taking computer science documents, manuals for our products, translating them automatically, and then comparing user satisfaction with that to what they get when a human does the same work. And we're getting basically no difference at all in terms of how people respond to those things. So we're on the verge, at least within technical domains, of doing machine translation. And so the idea that you can reach out to people in any language, you can have the world's knowledge available to them, it's pretty phenomenal. There's still some tough problems out there. Getting broadband to every citizen of the world, it's still very expensive. You know, the United States is now approaching about 40% of households with broadband. That would put us 5th among countries in the world. Korea is the highest. They're well over 75% of their homes have broadband connections. Japan has recently passed us by. China, percentage-wise, is very small, but China in this technology economy is a powerhouse. And it's not just in terms of the work that the people there can do, although that is interesting as well. They are by far the biggest mobile phone market in the world. They are becoming the biggest broadband market in the world. There's only a few categories left where they're not number one. And in those categories, they're number 2, and the United States is number 1. PC sales, the US is substantially number 1. We're about 30-some million, and they're still about 20-some million. So they're still lagging behind there somewhat, but you know what? It's 5 or 6 years before that changes. So this is a very global business, global in terms of its sales opportunity, global in terms of the things you have to take into account in doing these products. And to really illustrate this point that business and technology understanding are the key missing factors, it's deep insights into how products should be packaged. Should they be a one-time purchase? Should they be a lease? How do you set the prices so that you can get your software out to businesses in different countries? How can you make sure it's available to students? There's super interesting problems that we have to figure out. I remember once early in Jeff's career, he came in and asked me how we had decided to price the software. And I had to admit it was pretty arbitrary how we had done the software pricing. And of course, because we were the first, everybody followed us. So anything that was wrong with our software pricing, like there was this discount for being on a network essentially that was embedded into some of the early pricing, people would follow us into that. And so even where we needed to make changes and fix that was a very difficult thing. There is no business where the rules are changing as quickly. The rules of how you offer the products, what the products are, what companies you should go out and buy, how you should organize the company. Most industries, and I'm biased, I'll admit, most industries are largely the same as they've been. If your job is to sell stocks, then you kind of have to get the person to trust you and take them to lunch and things like that. The best stockbroker ever may have lived 50 years ago. Likewise, if you're selling bread or even Coke, which it's a wonderful company, it's a great one to invest in because the future of the Coca-Cola company is actually quite predictable. One of the great things about the technology business is the future is not predictable. I'd say in Microsoft's 30-year history, there's at least 6 cases where a decision had to be made to make a huge bet on something that wasn't clear, wasn't evident, a real, what we sometimes call turn in the road, that if we continued driving straight and sort of followed what most people would have expected, Microsoft would not have continued to succeed. When I grew up, one of the companies I admired was called Wang Technologies. Ayn Wang, who created that company, invented core memory, did calculators, did mini computers, did word processors. Wang was incredible. And when I was at Harvard, I went out and visited this huge tower of a building they had, and they had this customer center, and I thought, wow, this is quite a company. 7 years after that, Wang was in bankruptcy. The company that really defined the computer industry when I was growing up wasn't actually IBM. We always thought they were daunting, and who were those guys, and maybe we could beat them someday, which by some measures we have, but not all measures. Still more fun competition on that front. But it was Digital Equipment, our DEC, because they made computers that were interactive and that they had, even though they kind of missed personal computing, the early low-cost computers before personal computing were all from them. And so, when I was young, I was always trying to get source codes of the DEC operating system and memorize those and send in data about how they could do things better. Well, that company, with all of its great people and things, made bad business decisions. They didn't make bad technology decisions. In fact, they had the best technologists, people like Gordon Bell, who works for us today, Dave Cutler, who works for us today. We're all there and available to that management team, but they let their judgment become rigid, let's say, and DEC went downhill. Then, of course, DEC was bought by Compaq, and Compaq was bought by HP, and so there's been this huge merger of companies. And in capitalism, you see that. There's nothing particularly sad about that, but it's a real lesson to anyone in this business that there are no guaranteed positions. In software, for example, somebody buys a package, they get to use it for the rest of time without paying any extra money, so you have to have a breakthrough that really drives people to do something new. So the time that you're coming into this field is the best time ever. the most interesting breakthroughs in productivity, creativity, communications will be better now than ever before. Jeff and I were just in a meeting this week talking about, hey, the telephone's going away. You know, what is Microsoft's role with software to take that and turn that into something far, far better? And that's one of dozens of dreams that really kind of drive us and create opportunity. And so, you know, it's great that you're working in this area, and I'll be excited to see what you all can do. Thank you.
This question was inspired by the world is flat. Microsoft is a large company, as you know, that does more than Windows and Office. You do video games like the Xbox 360, search engines, entertainment media, and more, each of which requires a very specialized knowledge base and skills to be competitive in the world. So Mr. Gates, as a chief software architect at Microsoft, how do you keep up with the latest technology so that when a project manager comes to you and says, we want to do X, you A, can contribute to them, and B, you can make the right decision? Thank you.
Well, let me take video games as a great example. We were not in the video game business. You know, Atari was in. I played those early games, and it was always kind of a fun business to watch. But there came a point where these games got so powerful that the idea that the personal computer, the so-called set-top box that let you watch TV over a network, and the video game were clearly going to come together. Now that hasn't happened. That will happen over a period of 10 years. And so we looked at video games and we said, Sony is a great company. They're going through some challenges of their own right now, but you know, really strong engineering culture, done good work, good branding. We don't want them to be the only one in the video game space, because when you have a device in the home, you're going to want the best communications capability, productivity capability, learning capability, but also entertainment capability. And so we need to be there and have the people doing the best games in the world have our platform be one of those. And if we just do the PC, which is not in the living room so much, it's not packaged up the same way, it doesn't appeal to a certain class of games and gamers. If we just do that, we'll be creating this strategic hole that we could lose the home environment, because if someone else has this entertainment capability in the best games, they'll expand over into those other areas, because a single device will be able to meet your needs and be a lot simpler. And so we decided that we would spend billions of dollars doing our first generation of Xbox. Ended up being more than $3 billion. But and we won't see a payoff for that. Even in the Xbox 360 generation, we'll see some payoff, but nothing that justifies the risk that we took. It's either in the third or fourth generation, which will mean more than 10 years after we made that decision, that we'll get the benefit of having done that. Now that's, it's the kind of thing where, to really get directly at your question, I go off on these think weeks and I look at video game technology, I go talk to the games developers, and there are these unifications that will take place. The phone started out as a very voice-oriented device. Well, it's becoming now more of a data and browsing device, so that's where Microsoft's skill set would apply, and we had to find the right way to participate in that as well. We view anything where it's really hard software to write and it's a platform that allows other people to build on top of it. That's something we want to be involved in and create a family of offerings that work well together. Because in the future, things will be more user-centric. Instead of just having your data on the PC, your data will move between these devices automatically for you. And the idea that software can magically do that is part of the dream, which means we need to either be involved with or influence all these key device types. It is a challenge to stay on top of all the things. It makes it a fun job. I have Microsoft Research to help me out with that. And that's a group that's got really the top people thinking about voice recognition or quantum computing or graphics. And we now have a group in India, a group in China, a group here in the US, and a group in Europe, all of whom are recruiting in the best people. And there's this nice phenomenon is that smart people like to work with smart people. So as we've done well getting those labs going, they've been able to continue to attract incredible people and give us sort of a heads up on the future. And so I spend a lot of time with them.
Hey, Miranda.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Miranda Wrench. I'm a freshman and I'm a business management major. And I was just wondering, do you feel that the sole contributor to your success was just your idea and your intellect, or was there a certain philosophy or ideal that you hold that you feel has helped contribute? If so, what is it?
Well, success is a mysterious mixture of luck and skill and hard work and the people you run into and being in the right place at the right time. I will say that the basic values of Microsoft, believing in the power of software, taking a long-term approach, hiring smart people, making sure we work hard, very much a culture of let's not waste time on what we're doing right and congratulating ourselves too much on that, but let's talk about what we're not doing right and get that feedback so that we're utterly focused on that and understanding based on the history of our business with companies like DEC and Wang that even when you're doing your best, you're having your greatest financial success, if you're not renewing your technology, that's when you're making the big mistake. In the middle of the 1980s, there was a year that IBM earned $8 billion. I think it was 1984. And I knew that IBM was on its way down. Not all the way down, but they had made some huge mistakes in terms of how they thought about technology and software and capacity. And yet they experienced their record profits right at that time that the wrong personnel decisions, the wrong vision had gone in. And that's true of most technology companies. It's right when they're at the peak that the end is starting. And so you've got to have an awareness of that. So, I do think intelligence is a very helpful factor. Being able to take home a big program and read it, find the mistakes, being able to write lots of code. Certainly for the first 5 years of Microsoft, I wouldn't let anybody write any code that I didn't look over. It took me a while to get over that because I didn't want any code to go out that wasn't really good code. And today it kind of bothers me that, of course I see like 1% of the code that goes out, and I'm always saying to people, it's not as good as it used to be. In the good old days, it was tight, it was good, I could do it over the weekend. I haven't threatened that for a long time, but about up until maybe 12 years ago, I used to say, come on, you guys, I could do that over the weekend. And so, in my case, meeting Paul Allen, being there at a certain time, and getting the culture of the company going. We were the first software company, but even after, say, there were 20 or 30, the whole approach the other guys were taking, the way they would think short term, the kind of people they brought in, we knew that we were unique. I remember a Wall Street Journal article that said there's, 4 great companies. There's Ashton Tate, Lotus, WordPerfect, and Microsoft. And the basic theme of the article was, they're the same. And we knew we weren't the same in terms of the depth of our understanding and just how making a positive change. And so I think it's very hard to achieve the latter without the former. If you're a saint or something, I suppose those two things are out of alignment, but you're a saint, so you just go and do those things. Most good jobs don't force a misalignment there. A job where you can have impact is one where you feel like you do know what you're doing and you are working with other smart people and you enjoy the fact that these other people are very, very good. And you enjoy the fact that you're having to come up with new things all the time and almost surprise yourself with your ability to figure things out and do new things. And so I think you want to pick a job where you're comfortable but not totally comfortable, and that the people you're going to be around are going to push you up to a new level. I mean, there's this question, when you go to a university or pick a program within a university, is it the learning you get out of that program that makes it so special? Well, hopefully that's a part of it. But also another part of it is being with those other students and what's happening outside the classroom in terms of seeing how about they're thinking about their future and jobs. And I think that's almost equally important in a strong program type thing. Same thing with a company. What company is doing the breadth of things that you want to be exposed to? Where will you get a chance to not just sort of do simple little things that don't really test your ability, let you see how good you are, and let you try out different things. In the world of technology, the variety of jobs is incredible. I mean, at the extreme, there's somebody who's a pure engineer. That's in the makeup of a company like Microsoft. That's like 5%. It's important 5%, but the design of the interface, the marketing, working with customers, the planning, there's so many different skill sets that are interesting. And when people start their career, they're not really sure which of those they're going to gravitate to, which of them are very impactful. So I think it's worthwhile to not simply get locked into one of those things, to have a little bit of flexibility. So that short-term, hey, this is a fun job, I'm doing well, is generally what leads to dramatic success. Warren's not kidding. He really loves what he does. And if you look at hyper success like that, it often comes where when you go home at night, do you want to keep thinking about the problems you had at work? Now, you don't want to go to a job where they force you to do that every night, because you want to work at a sustainable pace. But on a night when things were super interesting, is it fun to keep playing with those ideas? And do you find yourself coming up with ideas on the weekend where you think, oh, I want to send mail, I thought of some new approach, and you send mail, and maybe they send mail back and say, no, you're wrong, but okay, you try again. Being in that interactive type environment, and certainly I've been lucky enough to have that, and to the best degree we can, we try and recreate that so that people can come in and be making key decisions fairly early on.
Okay, I guess we have time for a couple other questions. John, just let me know that.
Okay, good.
Dan.
Great.
Where are you?
I'm Dan Cromer. I'm a sophomore computer engineering major. And as a kid, I played a lot of dodgeball in gym class. And one thing I learned was that big kids make big targets. And I think, I'm just throwing this out there, I think that the same thing applies to companies. How do you keep a company like Microsoft successful when so many people are throwing their own revolver at you?
Well, in the position that Microsoft is in, you're going to be talked about a lot. You're going to get a lot of incredibly positive articles, some of which are nicer than you deserve. You're going to get a lot of super negative articles that are worse than you deserve. And these things do tend to go in cycles. It's funny. We between 1985 and 1995, we were like this perfect company. I mean, take the way Google's being treated today and multiply it by 10. We were the young kids who dropped out of school, and the magic of the PC and this super low-cost model, the creation of the software industry, the jobs, the empowerment. And it was a surprise, because our work was done during a decade when the United States looked at itself compared to Japan and thought, okay, the industrial model of the Japanese is somehow better. Its industry after industry are going away. In fact, the opposite, the humility that came out of that, I think, was valuable. Quite the opposite. Microsoft and others were doing things that would make us not only the envy of the Japanese, but the entire world in terms of what came about during those 1990s. So with success comes a lot of visibility and a lot of simple judgments about what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and as you say, a lot of competition as well. The number of business plans in Silicon Valley or worldwide that say, we have a bullseye on Microsoft's profit stream, we're going to go get it. There's probably 50 of those written a day. Now that's been true for a long time, and so far most of them have missed their target, and a few in some of the new areas are keeping us challenged in terms of the neat things they do. It is a very competitive environment, and that's helpful. I think it's about 50-50 between the things we do where we're way out in front by ourselves, like this TV over the internet thing. We are unique in that because we started so early. It's so expensive. I mean, we've spent well over $1 billion getting into it. The research we do, amazingly, we are very unique. The stuff we're doing on linguistics, machine translations, and things like that, there are very few other companies that even try, really two, I'd say, that even try to participate in those things. So there's some things where size, long-term approach lets you do them very uniquely. Then we get into others where other people are doing a good job. Sony in video games, Nokia in telephones, Oracle in databases, IBM in enterprise support, Google in terms of enterprise, internet search and how they've created an ad model along that. And that's what makes these jobs interesting, is you go and you look and you say, okay, what are they doing well? You know, are they human? Yes. And so can we do something that's as good? Can we do something that's better? Can we draw on this vast pool of experience to bring the right kind of teams together? And you know, we've had a lot of great experiences in the 50% that are very directly competitive, whether it's word processing or network operating systems or spreadsheets, where we really do take some bet that drives things forward. So you've got to get used to the idea that you're going to have massive competition and that is a great thing. And the day you can't do better than that competition is the day that they deserve to have the success. And every day you make sure it's at least a day later that day arrives.
Okay, one last question from Matthew Brand.
Matthew Brand, I'm a senior computer science major, and my question was, what do you feel J.D. Edwards Honors Program graduates bring to leadership positions that other college graduates don't?
Well, Jeff was going through with me the fact that we've been lucky enough to have, I think, 6 people now full-time who came out of the program. And I'm sure that's a number that's going to grow because the program is quite unique and speaks to a fundamental need that we have. We want our engineers to understand why they're doing what they're doing. We want our business people to really know the engineers, like them, really challenge them. Well, if you could do this, could you do this? Because that would be valuable. And take, for example, how expensive and complicated it is to manage computer systems, where the IT department is viewed as this kind of overhead thing. They're keeping things secure, keeping things up to date, figuring out how to map software and customize it to business needs. It's 100 times more complicated than it needs to be today. And so the idea that somebody has the skill set to go in and talk to customers and think, okay, here's where their pain points are. Go back, sit down with the engineers, brainstorm about where should management software go? What can we do as a service instead of forcing them to use packaged software? What new approach might make sense here? Having people who love business type issues and think in those terms and embrace the technology, which is the change agent. After all, it's the new rules of what software can do combined with the hardware advances that really make this such a dynamic field. And so, to have a group of people coming out of a program where, you've signed up to you've gone through a very rigorous admission process and then signed up to a rigorous set of courses, you've self-selected as well as been well-trained to have a combination of skills that is quite scarce and super important for Microsoft to have those things. So, even putting Microsoft aside, and just speaking for the industry, the need for that kind of combination is very strong. And so I'm a little surprised there aren't, more similar programs. But, in terms of scarcity value, you've got that working for you.
The director of the program, and just wanted to say just a few closing words and ask Bill just to hang on for just a second and with Jeff. But it's really been a historic day here at the Kauffman Center. We've operated only about 5 or 6 years, but our students and graduates are widely recognized and widely recruited. We've got a board of directors now that is on par, if not better, than that at many multinational corporations. Got a great faculty and staff. We have a lot of supporters in the audience from state government, the business community, the university. And we've just had a really interesting talk by the individual who probably all agree has had the greatest impact on information technology. So I wanted to thank Jeff as our board of directors, Ed McVaney, the original visionary of the program, along with his wife Carol, and thank Bill Gates very much for being with us today. And we want to do a little ceremony to express our appreciation to Jeff and Bill. So if a couple of our students would come forward.
Come on up, Jeff.
Jeff, please come up also.
Well, as Dr. Peck said, we're just up here. We'd like to thank you two for all that you've done today, especially Jeff. You've been instrumental in coordinating the board, the executive board, and I don't know if you know, it means so much to us, as evidenced by the fact that it's a Friday afternoon.
Nice day, yeah.
And Bill, thanks so much for coming and speaking with us today. It means so much to us that you would take some time, especially after already speaking once today, to come and just give a special presentation to us. So with that, we have some special gifts we'd like to hand out.
Just got a few tokens of our appreciation. First of all, for Bill, we have a little picture montage from the last time we believe you were here from the Washington-Nebraska game. Hopefully we're a little more hospitable to you than last time. I believe the Huskers beat you, Huskies 55-7. But we have that for you, so thank you very much.
Oh, these were the good old days.
We also have, an autographed football from our coaching staff.
Super.
Yep, just as a token of their appreciation for you coming out. And Nebraska experienced a little bit of a down year last year. Our first losing season since 1961, the first time we did make a bowl game since '68. So our coaching staff really wanted to get out there and hit the recruiting road hard. Really wanted to target bigger, more athletic players to really help us out. So we've got a jersey for you. To be honest, seeing you in this jersey doesn't really make me feel more hopeful about our next 7 years.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And Jeff, we also
We'll have the best strategies. though.
Yeah.
We also have an autographed football for you, Jeff, and a jersey as well. I think you'll notice that the interesting thing about this jersey is number 1.1. Jeff played actually a significant role in helping us choose the numbering system, and he mentioned earlier that he often gets confused for Bill. Well, apparently he thinks he's the new and improved version of Bill. Actually, 1.1. So thanks a lot, Jeff. Yep. And we wish, as much pull as we have around the university and around the athletic department, we couldn't change the time for tomorrow's game to allow you to stay. We hope you can wear these jerseys tomorrow and cheer us on against the Cyclones. So thanks a lot.
All right.
Will do. Appreciate it.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thanks.